This is the John Hallett Podcast, powered by ClearSky Training. If you're training with us in Castle Rock, Colorado, this is the thinking behind what we do at Rocky Mountain Self-Defense and Fitness. All right, let's get into this one, Josh. Why most self-defense classes miss the point.
What do you mean?
Most self-defense classes aren't bad, right? They're just incomplete, and incomplete training can create false security. And that's why people are going to a self-defense class, is to be safe, to feel secure, and that's a real problem. If a class focuses only on techniques and ignores judgment, it's missing the point.
Yeah, it's kind of like knowing how not to get into the fight, knowing how not to get into a situation is just as valuable as the techniques. So there's a lot involved with our self-defense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot there.
Right. So why do many self-defense classes focus too much on techniques then?
Techniques are easy to demonstrate and to market, the cool, flashy technique. But real self-defense depends more on judgment than memorization. Right? People like to memorize things. Yeah. I say that's why we took away the book. And why we have a rotating curriculum at RMSDF.
Yeah.
Because people were just trying to memorize techniques out of the book.
Right. Instead of actually applying them. And but that's easy for people to learn. It's what a lot of them crave. Yes.
So if you teach that way, your students feel like they're learning stuff and they've got all these things. I mean, that's what my early traditional martial arts were. It was just a collection of techniques that you memorized and went, Josh, are you ready to perform? Are you ready to defend a straight punch? I want to see your straight punch defense. And your mind goes, let me see. I mean, to a degree, we will test that as well. But it's a different context, and you've got to do everything else that we talk about.
But it's really technique centric.
Yes, it's like that's the only time you're just practicing it there. Okay, you're practicing an inside defense. You're practicing a choke with a push. There's dangers to that. I was going in on that today on here is choke with a push. And if you do it this way, all of the time, you're always saying you're ready for it. You're always basing with your favorite leg, right? You're getting pushed in the first part, base and address the danger. Well, when you're always ready, you're always basing with the same leg.
Yeah.
Sometimes you guys have to practice that you weren't ready and you staggered back and you kind of mock it up. And then under stress, and you actually get really pushed hard when you were not expecting the choke with a push.
Got it.
That's what we're talking about there. I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole on, just talking about that one technique.
Sure.
You've got technique first, context later with so many of the things, and you don't learn when to do it. Many programs are going to teach just lots of techniques and people feel like, oh, I've got a lot, right? It's the whole buy one, get one free. Like, wow, I got so much. They move quickly through variations.
Barely got the first one.
Some things are, you're like, ooh, now you got a ton of variations, like essentially on the same technique. That's why we always like, keep it simple. That's the same thing. They emphasize memorization, right? And things that are complex, it gets to be a high priority. Like, ooh, if you can do this, very complex thing. I'm like,
you can get out and survive.
Freaking gone.
And under stress,
why? Because techniques are easy to demonstrate, just to show, I'm going to do this. Right? It's an old and living color skit. They look impressive.
That's what grabs you.
They market well, but violence is not a technique problem. It's a decision problem.
Yeah. Making those choices, trying to look at a situation and know if it's going bad. I mean, you train us in that stuff all the time. Look behind you, right? Look for that second person. And it's just not always about technique. Sometimes it's about knowing where you're at, where you're going, what you're doing, who's around you.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It is.
Join us. You would love it.
So
what is the most... Well, I was thinking, what is the most important part of self-defense training? I ask you that a lot. Like, John, what is the most important thing to do? And
it's making the right decision, because it's not just what's going to happen to you there. It's what's going to happen to you after. Decision making under stress, not technique volume, like being able to make a good decision. That's so huge, especially when we have legal consequences involved, or just, I don't really want to hurt a person. I really don't.
I don't either.
I am willing to defend myself and protect my family, but I always say, like, smashing somebody isn't, great. You harm that. If you're a human being, even if you're justified, it's an awful thing to have to do. Is to smash them in the face, kick them in the groin, put them in a shoulder lock, whatever it may be. Even just the risk of them hitting the ground after. That was a good podcast we did a while back with the whole legal aspects of that stuff.
Force. It just, it's all so fine.
The missing piece, decision making, huge. Recognizing danger early, getting out of there, as the old adage says. But, especially these days, I think it gets harder and harder for people because they're sucked into, their phone. Avoiding escalation. People need so much practice with that.
And watch the little kiddos. I'm going to kick your butt. And they always go, I'd like to see you try. And you're like, escalation, right?
Setting boundaries, and knowing when to engage. Those two are, overlap very easily.
When not to,
and understanding proportional force. If a class never talks about legality, avoidance, de-escalation and emotional control, it's incomplete. It's not a well-rounded self-defense program.
So can some of these self-defense places then, do they create a sense of false confidence?
Absolutely, Josh. Gosh, my early martial arts, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so unprepared. I had such false confidence from my early training, because it never did, hardly any of this stuff. When students learn movements without context, pressure, or legal awareness, they feel capable without really being prepared. And that, is a big problem. You think you're capable.
And how, the Dunning-Kruger,
and you are not,
right? And everybody thinks, and it goes back to this, I'll rise to the occasion, right? Stress doesn't bug me. I'll be able to pull it off. And often, we've talked about this stuff before. You just don't, right? And that it's a scary thing to have when you can't do what you think you can do when it actually comes time to do it.
The danger is isn't really lack of skill. It's misplaced confidence a lot of times. If someone believes, I know self-defense, but they never managed adrenaline, right? We see, that is a huge one. They never faced, any resistance in there, right? That's my chess drill game, right? Where, they get a move, you get a move. Like so many self-defense that you get caught up in making all the moves. Or as I say, you're just a little kid just cheating through the game, Candyland. You're just moving all the way to the end of the game on one move. They're going to move. They're going to do stuff, and it's, having a little bit of resistance in that again, start slow. And you build that up. People want to go way too fast in that.
You need to build that confidence in yourself.
Another key point, decision making. Talk about that all the time. Right. Just, legal consequences. Are you guys talking about those in your class? Like, you learn a move and all well and good, but were you justified to snap that guy's arm? Let alone, throw a straight punch? Was that,
kick them in the face when they're down? People don't think this stuff through, right? And how often do we see students who finally start to win a little bit? They're like, I'm just going to keep kicking and go and go and go. And it's like, well,
don't forget about that lesson. Move away.
Right.
It's do whatever it takes to go home. And when you can go home, you need to go home, not continue to hit them.
Right.
It's, I do need to hit and punch and, grapple, do whatever it takes to go home. But when I can make distance and get away, I need to get away.
Right.
And again, that's not always as easy as you think, because sometimes you're trying to disengage from somebody and it's not happening. Like all these skills just take so much time and practice.
Right. This is why you need to train
to be truly safe.
Absolutely. So you got to put in the time.
You gotta work. That's why, self-defense is great physical fitness.
Oh my. Oh,
because you're doing stuff. I mean, I had somebody like, hey, I'd love to come back. I was never in as great a shape as when I was training with you in Krav Maga.
Exactly. And like,
so you're learning a skill and you're getting in shape at the same time, better than, sitting on the couch.
There's days after I'm like, man, I feel really strong from grappling.
Yeah. Yeah. Just messing around. It's a good workout exercise. And everything, everything we do.
And that's purpose.
Yeah. I mean, what you want to look for, what real self-defense training looks for, you getting a lot of real training with repetition, progressive resistance, scenario-based thinking, legal context, right? Emotional regulation, clear and structured correction. I'm laughing because your wife said, like, do you ever want to punch John at work? Emotional regulation.
I said all the time.
All the time. John, maybe one of us needs to work on emotion. Maybe.
I'm working on
I'll
it.
try to be nice to you, Josh. I really do.
Oh, I thought I was being mean to you.
Oh, I don't know. But why are you going to punch me?
I take my emotions and I push them way down.
Way down. You're going to punch me. In there.
That was
Leo.
This one's Leo joining the show.
As usual. He doesn't like to hang out with me in the office unless Josh is here.
That's because I'm nice.
I am nice. I just don't pay attention. I just don't give him the attention that you
grapple with the dogs. Be honest.
Do I grapple? Oh yeah, they like to fight with me.
You've gone off the rails.
All right.
So what do we look
Back
for?
on track.
Yeah.
What to look for?
Yeah.
Is avoidance taught? Is legality discussed? Is resistance emphasized? Is restraint emphasized as well? Right? Is stress introduced gradually, not crazy?
Like all at once, 7 people coming at you. It's like,
and that's what a lot of people worry about.
Yeah.
When they join a self-defense gym, is ego discouraged? A big one, and it's a hard thing to do.
I've got the biggest ego there.
You do,
at least at the gym. Yeah.
I
absolutely.
don't think you do.
I do. I think probably.
I guess because everybody thinks. I mean, it's checking your ego. Check it. Check it all the time.
Yeah.
If the answer is no, the program's incomplete. And I will say, as you get better and better, we've added a lot more legality. It was always kind of glossed over early on at my gym, just adding this, always trying to become better and not being stagnant.
Yep.
Is a huge thing. And it's easy to do, to give people like, here's a technique and here's a technique. It's a whole lot easier, than showing somebody this big, giant, complete system. Because when they come in, they think they have no clue, really.
And they need,
and the misconceptions on what self-defense training, what martial arts is, it doesn't, even context of MMA. Like people don't they think they know because they saw it on TV, but they don't really know.
And often that shows up like, I watched a video and I saw this guy and I hear that a lot with students come on TV. And I love that they're out there watching this stuff and watching fighting happen. I think it's really cool because it's part of the learning process. But to think that like they're going to become capable from watching an MMA fight happen between two professionals and you'll be able to pull it off, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a wrap.
I think so too.
Look, guys, self-defense is not about collecting techniques. It's about becoming a disciplined decision maker under pressure. Right? That's really hard to, make the right decision. If your training doesn't improve your judgment, it's missing the point. All right. If you want to go deeper on real-world self-defense decision making under stress and responsible firearms training, everything we teach lives at ClearSky.training. ClearSky is where we break down the training behind self-defense, awareness, avoidance, judgment, legality, and decisive action when violence can't be avoided. If you're in Castle Rock, Colorado and want hands-on training, that philosophy is put into practice at Rocky Mountain Self-Defense and Fitness. All right, guys, this is the John Hallett Podcast. Train more, suck less.